Hey everyone, welcome to November 14th Principal Profit Trader Coaching Call. We're going to take a look at a market that is a little tricky context because it's had a huge run in the last couple of days here, the last couple of weeks, and we may are now going to be possibly seeing signs of some short-term exhaustion. But remember, this is 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, right? So while you might see a balance here, oh, we had a breakout attempt. This is only a couple of days here, so this isn't really a giant structure that failed. To me, if this broke, right, not only this zone that I've marked, but also the bottom of this bounce on strength, obviously it would be a lot better if it was a week long instead of 3 days or whatever. But then then we could possibly be backing off this. But as long as this holds here, this is just a neutral short-term back and forth resting area. Now, if we go to the daily, right, it doesn't look so bearish, right? It's only the last couple of days. Yesterday's candlestick pattern was a 50-50 day because while it did close above the previous day's close, right, it did so by having a slight false breakout, right? So it had this selling tail, right? But even though it closed, so it's like candlestick pattern, kind of the bulls went for test, had a strong rejection. Good chance that today was going to have not a breakout based on that, possibly two-sided. That's why I'm going long today, but clearly the bears have been in control from an intraday bias. Just if we look at the intraday bias, the bears have been in control, but this is clearly not a downtrend day. This is just a day it's a normal variation day. It's going sideways. Bulls were in control, break down, bears in control, bulls. So it's a normal variation sideways type of a day, which you'd expect when we have a very bullish time frame alignment with the big and intermediate time frames aligned, and now the short term of the last, you could say the last 3 days have been sideways, but if you count that fourth day, it's still neutral bullish. So I don't see anything to panic over in terms of that, but at least on the day time frame, you have to be mindful that moving a series of thrusts and corrections, and you got to say, okay, if we're going to talk about day trading, who's in control on the day and what's the momentum like? Now, clearly, the market overall, the bears have been in control. This has been a selling day. But if we look across the market, this isn't really breaking any of the previous context from a time frame perspective. For example, even though the short term may be a little bit down for Ethereum the last 3 days, really the intermediate term since November 5th is still up and quite substantially up because it's still above a very important fib ratio. That's not even at 0.5. So this is very strong, very healthy. Obviously, Bitcoin is leading. It has a giant bounce breakout pattern. So, I mean, nothing's really invalidated because it's breaking and building structure. It has to hold above it. We want it to hold above it because if it doesn't take a couple of days to rest, we don't have the next leg up, right? So that's what we need in these markets. Now, just as we take a look across the board, you can look at the S&P, not really caring about that right now, right? You can see the same, with lower market cap coins, for example, DOT, the lower market cap than Ethereum. It has the last 3 days, even though this is a similar pattern to Ethereum, it's just more volatile. If we measure this fib ratio, this would probably be closer to half, right? Yeah. So yeah, I just eyeballed it. I didn't even need to do that. But you see how this is the more volatile coin is pulled back in 3 days to half, while in Ethereum, it's only pulled back to the 0.32 because it's more volatile. But overall, still it's that context is still in place until the intermediate term is invalidated. And it's also on top of a balance as well. It's on top of this balance that I've marked. So today's very important how we close. If we can hold at these levels to keep the intermediate time frame intact, which I think it will. The odds are is that this is not going to like completely reverse this intermediate time frame across the broad. Like basically this reversed everything. This reversed everything. This reversed everything. The longer this matures, and the way that it gets there is different. For example, just eyeing engine, right? Intermediate term pulling back on top of this structure, which is a high volume node after a mature balance, while Bitcoin is in price discovery mode. This has greater odds now, to hold a pullback. And if we go to object tree, Add that in. There's you get rid of this fixed one. Oop, it's kind of not what I wanted. You can see while the main high volume node is still here, you can't ignore these ones or this one. This high volume node is the reason why, we have problems when we come up here. In fact, it's not even the high volume node yet that has caused this real selling point. It's the low volume node in between here, where you can see there's basically no time spent at prices, very quickly rejected. If you want a lot of time spent at price, that's where you get the high volume nodes. There was some time spent at price here. Like I basically can visualize these things without seeing them. So there's still, even in these lower cap coins with an Ethereum type pattern of a pullback, it's still intact to, some more than others. For example, Injective more than Engine. Cass already showing what I've already envisioned for these other patterns. Now, Cass, it looks like with that same pattern, got past the 38.2%, and it looks like it might have even breached. Yeah, so it broke the 0.5. That's what I was getting at. But it did not break the final one, which is the ultimate fib ratio of the golden mean ratio of 61.8%. Don't value much 78.6 because it's basically at the low of the day anyway. It's just building a range. It's like here or here, but it's like this is for this pullback continuation pattern to be in play. This is leading. You can see Cass has relative strength to the market today. It's over 16.87% right now. And hopefully the rest of the market will catch up and look like Cass is tomorrow with this sort of pullback. Uh, Makes sense. Maybe Cass jumped in. It's not at 38.2. It's not at 0.5. It went a little deeper. Value buyers stepped in. And that's where we're at with that. Let me save that. Now, similar pattern just across the board, just in a different way. Now, LCX actually is the weakest of these. It has very much relative weakness. I do invest in this one. I'm surprised that it has fallen off this much. It's still in play, but by far my worst performer of my new portfolio allocation. We'll see. This is bottom building here. Um, I'd like to see this stabilize and then basically get up back up to the 200, which I think it will. It just seems to be behind the other ones for sure. Another one that had trouble performing is LTO, despite the government contracts. I wish I was out of that one, but Op got to four for me back in the day. I took profits on a lot of, and I traded this in December, and this was great for me, but it hasn't really performed well. It's pretty much lost all its gains, but it's still a viable like a lot of these layer twos are still viable, and we'll look at the Bitcoin dominance in a second to see when we might have a run in those. Might be sooner than you think. Ren, they Ito holding up very well, right? I told you it probably would hold up balance area. Maybe we'll have a more of a possibility of a greener day tomorrow on this pause day if we can close like that. I mean, Soul Sweet and Seed is very much been the darlings, really. The old narratives are just getting smashed. And this is I don't want this to happen. This barely really had a strong move anyway. So this is just almost like hopefully we're gonna bottom build. I want the other ones to be pullbacks. Like for Polygon, I hope it's a pullback continuation. I had this marked yesterday that we would go back down in here into the VWAP and tomorrow we get a pullback. Yeah, we still don't have that mania yet, but it's starting. Google search is starting to go crazy for Bitcoin now. So that's what we need. We need that FOMO to kick in with retail to help pump it as well as institutional FOMO. But Dot and some of these layer twos that I've been talking about looking healthy. And if you have gotten in some of these that have been performing really well, like Tensor Die, I mean, why wouldn't people say, why wouldn't you take profits? Of course you can take profits at the highs, but it still doesn't invalidate the fact that we broke market structure and we're holding above it, and now we're in price discovery. right? Until this completely fails and I see some type of sharp climax, this just becomes a larger balance, right? This is technically what Bitcoin's doing, right? TensorDai has broken out of its balance. And just as a principle, I mean, I don't know, like, I bet whether they're false breakouts or breakouts, I'm betting that they're breakouts in this context, but you could see why I don't want to short now. I mean, look at how many green days we've had. It's just you don't want to really be shorting it. Today might have been the only day based on yesterday's candlestick where you probably did want to maybe get in, but I still don't want to short against the larger time frame binds after we've had a bounce breakout, even though I know that it's, you know, even in price discovery mode, if the leg count gets too overextended, we're going to have red days. It's just there's no bull market where every single day is green, even though we've had one, two, three, four, multiple over a week of group before we had any day that closed in the red. So I go with the larger time frame buys. That's just what I'm going to do when we have multiple time frame alignments. So that's what I see with DAI or Tensor, that we are in price discovery, but we are already seeing, right, a selling tail, right? And we've had selling tails like this, and then we go quite quite down. We don't want this to start. If this closes really, really in the by its lows, and we see a strong selling tail, and then tomorrow we start to, if it closes anywhere inside the balance, then the breakouts failed, and the odds are that this thing's going to go back down quite a bit lower. Now, will this go back down and touch the low balance? Probably not. It probably could go back into one of these other launching points and just build more structure up here for another leg up. But we'll see. These are smaller market caps, and they can surprise us with how fast they do move. You see Tau sort of coiling up still. No one's really broken those highs yet. Besides my pick for SUI, CETUS, the beta play, I mean, a lot of coins are still just haven't really broke their highs yet. I mean, most coins haven't. Thank God we got into some of these that have really CETUS, SUI, the Taus, Tensors, the AI plays, very much the narratives. But there are great projects that have just as many great partnerships, just as many things happening, really good premise behind them, but just haven't performed. Like, look at Theta. Theta is a very much a project that I've invested in. I like the idea of it. I think the idea of it's brilliant and the partnerships are great, but it just doesn't have the price discovery. It doesn't have, it's not performing like what is really performing like Sweet. It's not. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to get out of this and just convert all my Theta that I didn't cash out from last cycle and off of into SUI, because I'm going to, I have my SUI quite a bit from a new allocation. And, some of these old projects, you call them old, but really they're still really new if you think about them. I mean, they haven't gone away partnership. We don't know what these things could look like. You look at it now, but it wasn't too long ago when, Theta was looking like this, and it can get really parabolic really quickly. And, we forget that it got actually to $16. So this was its high in March 11th for a lot of different coins. And, we haven't even gotten to the next real anywhere near the highs yet. But what is Theta doing right now? Well, if I look at what it's doing from a fundamental perspective, it's always got a partnership. It's always got this, but it just doesn't perform. Price wise, I understand why people swap out of it. But that's a personal prerogative whether to do that. I think the only thing I've really been swapping around is my old data SNT from Tika's bags. I've moved into, I think, CETUS at one point, sold some things, but I'm not a big fan of swapping around portfolio. I'd rather take an allocation in Tether in short term day and swing trade it and use those for investments as well as living expenses, and then take that off into Tether. I'm sorry, into the wallets, into crypto. And then basically for this bull run, it's going to be cashing out in Bitcoin for cash through a collateral loan, so it's tax free, and then the rest is going to be in Tether, maybe in some USDC for diversification or DAI. But I don't like the fact that if you go into USDC on a US exchange or even potentially on a foreign exchange, it's a taxable event, more so than if you go in and out of Tether, because USDC is considered some type of a security or something. At least that's how it is in the US code. Just FYI, if you don't go into USDC into Bitcoin and USD, for example, and you went maybe into Bitcoin into DAI or Tether on a different exchange, and that's not taxable, I guess. So, little safety tip. Cash really the only performing coin doing well today at 17%. Very much, I hope this is the pattern that we're going to see tomorrow across the board because Cass kind of follows its own timeline. When it was making this triple top in July, making a new all-time high, the rest of the market was dead. I mean, no coin was making an all-time high or breaking its all-time highs. But of course, as a rule of thumb, if your other asset besides Bitcoin is breaking out and making an all-time high, when Bitcoin has not done so yet, there's a good odds that it's going to be a reversal point because these things don't move unless Bitcoin does its thing. And that's just the way it is. So hopefully this has given us a heads up to what tomorrow and the rest of the market will be. I'm not thinking that everything's going to have such a great day of 17%, but I would love to see green tomorrow. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see green in Pole and Matic. I guess I have to call it Pole now. Is that what people call it now? Pole? I wouldn't say persistence so much, but the ones that have had good intermediate term flow and then have now pulled back, not so much these uglier Tika picks, but like good flow, pull back up, right? SUI just creeping higher, right? And we kind of saw that yesterday that anytime there was a decent pullback, buyers with these two strong buying tails, very much giving us a strong indication that if you were doing a daily call for tomorrow and you had this much data before you saw this candle form, that you would be sideways up for sure, at least under candlestick pattern, and the only thing you might be a little bit cautious of is maybe your leg count might be overextended. But other than that, you have time frame alignment, you have your buying tails, you have price discovery. I mean, no one wants to be the guy buying at the highs, but you also don't want to be like, oh, now I figured it out. I'm going to short up here. No, this thing, I'm telling you, when you have time frame alignment, especially now with Bitcoin, other markets now going to catch up, like SUI's always been there, but these other markets, it's like you'd be surprised at how bullish it can be. You'd be like, you can stop that on all your shorts. Just don't do it. Now, an hourly is always a good chart for setups, but if you want to just look at flow a little bit, you can go on the 15 and you can read volume. So you could see, if you were just doing this mechanically, there's not good RR into this if you were going to go long on Ethereum. Whereas yesterday I went long because there was good RR after this got extended and the ATR got maxed by the average true range. This is in a tight coil. The daily didn't look great. We had but when it gets into here, this was, or at least at the 10:15, a little early, it was around this candlestick here, right? I went long, stopped enough where I didn't get hit, cashed out here, now stopped out. Thought about going long again. Then I did for Bitcoin and Ethereum because at least now we have a nice double. This actually was probably harder to take on first test because I had to like deal with the momentum and I was a little early. Basically I'm basically fading this on pure trade location, even though the bias and the momentum are against me. But when I'm looking at this, yeah, the momentum is against me at that point, but I'm calculating in real time and pre-market, is this going to be a downtrend day odds wise? And it just wasn't. Based on everything I've seen, I just wasn't betting on that. And you could see, if you were just a guy who followed momentum and you were getting ready to short a breakdown, you got destroyed down here. Because you don't short at the low of the day at that time of day for sure. Now, recently I have given a few because we've had major time frame alignment, we've had momentum. There was two breakout setups where you actually are buying with momentum and bias on your side when the larger time frame is alive. One of the setups was called an intraday bounce breakout. It's called an IBB. You can read about the rules. Another one is called a contextually aligned bounce breakout setup. And that is not necessarily breaking something intraday, but almost like breaking like a couple day structure. And it's the way we got there is that it's not going to be exhausted. There's good odds that it could keep going higher. Like yesterday when I gave a long, as this was breaking out, this was the data that we had yesterday, where it was like this much data, and this was this was a contextually aligned bounce breakout where as this was breaking, I was buying it, right? Stop below the breakout bar, right? I took half off really pretty much around here, which was near 100% of the range it broke from. I didn't even need to see this, but if you saw this, you better much be taking profits because then you got stopped out. It went right back into balance. And not quite at the low, but it was at this thing here. So it just, when I wasn't a good reload for me, but that's that setup. Now the IBB setup, um, when did I do that one? Oh, it was here. This was even better because it wasn't the IBB setup was that we had multiple time frame alignment and right, it was we were bouncing intraday for at least an hour. This started at 5:15 and it had a very clearly defined upper edge and lower edge of boundary. And then as soon as it broke on strong momentum, you see how big these vertical volume is? That was a buy. Stop below the breakout bar. Really nice momentum. These are nice set. If you can really do these and wait for these IBBs and contextual lines, they very much have to have time frame alignment to wait for them when they happen. They have really high odds because they work out very quickly. I didn't like, if you bought like here, that wasn't really a setup for me, right? This isn't momentum. This isn't at this point in time, right? A pullback continuation setup because it's just there's no momentum in it, right? There's nothing going, there's no right? Even though it's a pattern, right? That's a setup, right? Or, you could have had a sideways call. That's the low of the day. Then you went low there, but that was at like 1 in the morning. Then you would, take some profits maybe near the highs and then hold runners. That's great, but sometimes you just don't get those. Then you got to go towards not location-based setups, but ones based on, when you're scanning the market. Back in the day, maybe I would let something go because you don't want to be a breakout trader because most of the time people don't know when to do them. I don't really post those that much. But what am I going to do? Right? Everything's aligned. All the rules are there. I didn't get the low of the day. Why wouldn't I take a breakout setup, a momentum? You have to. That was when I was in front of the screen, and that was a huge win, right? Now, I know after the next day, after you have a trend day, I'm not going to have any kind of breakout setups because you take location based on sideways calls. So the next day after a trend day, I'm sideways. I'm not going to buy in a breakout. There's no setup up here. There's no, oh, it was bouncing for hours and now it's going. No, that's not a setup. You pullbacks where the first leg is, that was fine. These were all over the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, right? And it's always tough to, fading set. When you go, a fade is going against the immediate price action. They always take longer than maybe a momentum setup when you have the bias and everything on your side. The momentum setups that I just described, which was rare to have two in 1 week, but I definitely said before that when you have multiple time frame alignment, when you just broke a bigger picture bounce breakout pattern, when you have everything like that, you're going to have a higher frequency of trend and you're going to have greater magnitude in trend. So I'm just like more open to trend setups where I usually don't take those, right? Pretty much a lot of the trend setups, there's always a location if you watch this 24 hours a day, right? But I mean, I'm asleep. This is midnight at 12:30 and I'm not super, if I think I got out at 7,500 on one of my runners, which it was kind of a mistake. I have one runner in long again, and I had another runner in, but I made a mistake. You'd be surprised how fast these Bitcoin, when it starts getting directional, how fast it can move. I didn't move a runner in time, and this thing went so fast. I was like, wow, 75's hit. It was like right here, which was kind of cool because then, like, for the next couple of hours, I felt like, oh, see, it was great. But, there was the reload. Then you feel pressure to get in again. And really, if you just held that, I would have been compounding something really nice, because these are great moves. Now, it would have been fine today. Part of what I was going to do today was just not trade at all, because if you look at the daily setup, you just don't want to buy anything on the daily. There's nothing really nice. It's not hitting like the lows of this or the lows of that. It's not, it's this, it's not, it's the rest of the markets are down. Everything today said maybe not do anything, but I also remind myself, okay, well, maybe the short term is neutral. I can use smaller time frame ideas to get in but that requires a little bit more nuance, and you can definitely make more mistakes that way. So didn't mean to do that. How do I get that out of there? There we go. Mhm. So if depending on where you measure or start the trend, which is a little bit of an art and a science, I'm just for this sake saying, okay, where did this strong leg start where we broke out of balance? Where this was sort of creeping, resting, and then up here, and then right here, it started to get very directional and hasn't really slowed down. You could say here, you'd even say here, maybe I'll do here. And so these pullbacks are quite shallow. This one 23.6%. I don't even really even look at that much. I look at 38.2, obviously the half one, and then 61.8%. We're not even getting that, which is a sign of strength, but it also makes entering difficult because you don't have something that's an obviously really good trade location. If there is an intraday bearish bias like today against us, you really don't feel like a lot of the bulls really getting in. I mean, yeah, there's a little double bottom here, but look how long this is taking me. Whereas other days, this would be so obvious that it was in my favor. Like, any one of these with the buying tails, you're very confident that you're going to hold up to here, take profits at the very least. Bam. See? Now, you probably got stopped out. I remember this one. I didn't get in again. It was a little heavy and I had to go to the store, but technically, this was a triple bottom and that should have been a reload uh, because I got stopped out of break even. And then, that's the real, right? The high of the day was the real target. And that should have been the one we hit. But, you know, when when the intraday bias is against you and you get so focused on it, you have to remind yourself you have to zoom out and just look at, okay, well, besides all this action intraday that may get me emotional this way, I'm going to be looking at my rules when I look at this bigger time, multiple time frame top down. I'm looking at the top down. I'm looking at the higher time frame given that weight. The daily is still extremely bullish. If you look at that giant candlestick that we had on November 11th, that's a super launching point of directional conviction. See, we didn't just creep up here. We broke here with conviction. And we're resting. It's not like we went from one end of the balance and now we're going to go and now we've touched to the other end of the balance and we've done so with a candlestick that looks like this. This washout candle now has broken this. We broke rest. That was perfect here. Perfect context. It's very hard to think to go long up here because you're like, wow, I'm at the highest of the high. But look what we just broke. Look at the time frame that we just broke. Look at what happened yesterday. That was really good. Really, when this started coiling up, we knew this was going to be another great move. We had that great move. And now, the higher we go, the greater the odds for a pullback. These pullbacks were very, very shallow. These pullbacks are shallow, but they're still more volatile, quite more volatile than these pullbacks. Because, as we go higher in leg count, the odds increase that we're going to have a steeper pullback because more and more people are happy. They're going to take profits. But at the same time, because of the multiple time frame alignment, because we've switched odds, right, to these higher time frames, every single pullback is going to be viewed by people that haven't got in as a chance to get in, and they're going to get just completely eaten up. You notice I was already prepared for that psychologically, warning everybody as we broke this. Favor support over resistance. These things increase in frequency. Now we can do momentum breakout setups. And I did it in real time because I'm already prepped for this because I have a system that switches my setups based on the market context from a top-down perspective. So whereas when I was inside that balance, I was neutral bearish. I was taking, shorts. I had money on the futures exchange just for shorts. And we were open to both going long and both, depending on, were we touching this and then trending down or going from here and then trending up. That was the bias. That was it. But now that we're out of this, that's over. That two-sided bias is over. We are now in price discovery. I'm looking at every single pullback as not the end of this move, but as a possibility to go long while still gauging and reading it day by day, moment by moment to ascertain whether, okay, maybe now it's a little short term, back off, don't trade today. This thing needs to pull back a little bit more, which in my mind, today could have been that day. And, it kind of is. It's not a great day. This trade that I'm in, this trade worked out. This trade looks like it might work out. But overall, if you just looked at this day, the whole market, it's down 2.5%. The whole market is mostly red. This would have been probably a day that I would have been okay, completely maybe going to the beach, doing something else because just the daily looks so ugly. If it was actually a little bit deeper into 38.2, I would actually, even though ironically it's lower, you might think it's weaker. That's when I would be getting a little bit more aggressive because the trade location has a potential to be exhausted and to reignite this larger time frame bullish bias because the short and the intermediate term is up. Now, the big picture is up because we broke this giant structure over a month, and the intermediate term is up because the last 7 to 14 days is in a trend. The short term, you could say, is 1, 2, 3. You could say neutral, but I can't even say completely neutral. I have to say neutral bullish because this fourth day is part of my system. I have 1 to 4 days. Is this short term? Is this like a strong breakout? Pull back. So that's the only reason I am taking, an ugly, would you consider an ugly trade on the daily because we're so overextended and it's not really at anything great. And the intraday bias is bearish. The only reason I'm taking this is because I'm reminding myself that, pretty much almost every support zone or is getting, you know, eaten up. And if this thing continues to go back and forth, and then get some mature bounce, then possibility for breakouts come back into play or breakdowns if that is warranted. But as of right now, I have moved all my tether from the futures so that I could go long and short on contracts to spot just because I want to go with the spot price and help the spots out, even though it's a little bit more expensive because because it actually forces me not even to short because I'd have to do one extra step. I have to move it back over to the futures to short, but this is just one extra thing because I'm like, hey, I'm already going with the larger time frame bias. I'm not even looking for that. I'm saving my financial, emotional capital to go with the trend, even though you could say, well, that was an opportunity. You could have opportunity. Fair enough. But I want what is easy. I want what I think is going to go with it. And right now, I think despite the last, the struggle of the last couple of days and even today being a bearish day, overall, big picture, we are up and I don't see that changing. Now, I don't see that changing because it hasn't changed. And the market, you have to let the market tip its hand, but also be open to it changing because anything can happen. But odds are that this is time frame alignment. We are in price discovery. And that can only be a good thing. Now, we are at a very strong resistance zone on the Bitcoin dominance chart that I have marked as the lower odds alt season scenario 1. I really want it up here and then get a sharp reversal because then that would really mean there was more money in the market. It has a stronger contraction reaction, expansion, contraction model. But we are already having, that's why I've had this one marked because we are already having problems up here. You can see up here, we already had a strong reaction. And that's when the alts had a little run about a week ago. And they kind of backed off as Bitcoin climbed, but we are already getting smashed up, not even into the zone ahead of it because it is such a strong area of resistance. What is this area? Structure-wise, it's the bottom of a huge multi-year balance. Really. I mean, so and bang, right? Multiple area touch points, and then a high volume node, and then a launching point of directional conviction. This is a huge key reference area. It's so many market participants had something to say at this area. And that's why I had it marked ahead of time. We're already even magically, it's not magic, it just is what it is, already just getting a reaction right into it, which could spark a huge layer 2 alt season. Huge, because these things, unlike all the other things, like what really hasn't caught up yet is the layer 2s and these alts. Even Ethereum, I marked in that category. It's not even at its all-time highs yet, let alone breaking it substantially like Bitcoin has. So Bitcoin clearly leading with a few, besides the meme coins, a few darlings like SUI and, the beta play SUI, and maybe Tensor doing its thing here. But a lot of them are actually at great value buys. I can't believe that a lot of these alts haven't caught up yet. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Dow was at $56 last time. last bull run. It went up to 56. Um, Unbelievable. So lots of possibilities. These things will go a lot faster than we think. But yeah, we all want them to go faster than they do. But with this new political landscape in place, interesting things being said. Um, I think I published something in the channel today, news related, where Donald Trump's son says he's never been more bullish on Bitcoin. I mean, that stuff, you know, that energy definitely matters because folks pay attention to that stuff, and we want a friendly administration to crypto, and it looks like that's what we're getting. So that is it for the market context. I will now open the floor up to anyone who has any questions, and we got a small crowd tonight. So if you have a question, now's the time.
Not really.
Okay, no
I mean,
worries. I didn't think
yeah,
anyone did. I try to be as thorough as possible and really look at this from a real odds-based
yeah.
perspective and take my
It
emotion out of
actually
it.
doesn't surprise me that SUI hasn't retraced
Yeah, me neither.
and so,
The
but
Squeeze going to
patience.
be price discovery. I mean, it has broken its all-time highs, and I'm surprised at how big its market cap is. I think it's in the top 20 now. I think it just beat Link at number 15 or something. So yeah, it's got the narrative. It's got the backing. It's got meta behind it, and it's very fast. I used it recently. It's the fastest. I thought Theta was the fastest, but I think Sui is even faster. They're unbelievably fast, and cheap. So it's got that going for it. But other than that, um, the average person can't even pronounce these tickers or let alone know what a Bitcoin is. So where early is as early does, and we may be in a much different picture first, second quarter of next year. Looking forward to that. And I'll be your advisor along the way. All right,
Thanks, man.
guys. Yeah, thank you, Fibo, coming out. And you know where to find us. Have a good one.